The photograph that changed everything was taken on a Tuesday afternoon in March, in a small bookshop in Portland, Oregon. It showed two women standing close together, their heads bent over the same book, their fingers nearly touching on the open page. One woman had silver streaks in her dark hair and laugh lines around her eyes that spoke of 5 decades of living. The other was young, barely into her 20s, with bright eyes and an expression of such pure adoration that anyone looking at the image would immediately understand, this was not a casual friendship. The photograph was posted on social media by someone who had been in the bookshop that day. Within hours, it had gone viral. Within days, it had been shared hundreds of thousands of times, accompanied by comments ranging from heartwarming support to vicious condemnation. And within a week, the two women in the photograph, Dr. Evelyn Hart, 52, and Mia Santos, 24, found themselves at the center of a firestorm they had never anticipated. But the story of how they got there, the story of how a renowned psychology professor and a young bookshop owner fell in love across nearly 3 decades of age difference, is not the scandal the internet made it out to be. It's a story about two broken people finding each other. About healing happening in the most unexpected places. About love that doesn't care about timelines or expectations or what the world thinks is appropriate. This is their story. And I promise you, it's not what you think. Evelyn Hart had been alone for a very long time. Not physically alone, she had colleagues and students and a sister who called every Sunday, but emotionally alone in a way that had become so familiar she had almost stopped noticing it. Her marriage had ended 15 years ago, when her husband had left her for someone younger, someone who wanted children, someone who didn't spend every evening buried in research papers about attachment theory and childhood trauma. The divorce had been brutal, not because she loved him so desperately, but because it had forced her to confront a truth she had been avoiding: she had never loved him at all. Not really. Not the way she was supposed to. She had dated occasionally in the years since, men who were perfectly nice, perfectly acceptable, perfectly boring. Each relationship had fizzled out after a few months, leaving Evelyn more convinced than ever that something was fundamentally broken inside her. That she was incapable of the kind of love other people seemed to experience so easily. At 52, she had made peace with her solitude. She had her work, groundbreaking research on how early attachment patterns affected adult relationships. She had her students, many of whom she had mentored into successful careers of their own. She had her apartment overlooking the Willamette River, filled with books and plants and the comfortable silence of a life lived alone. It was enough. She told herself it was enough. And then she walked into Mia Santos's bookshop. The shop was called Second Chapter, a small, cramped space on a quiet street in Portland's Alberta Arts District. Evelyn had discovered it by accident, ducking inside during a sudden rainstorm, and she had immediately fallen in love with the cluttered shelves and the smell of old paper and the feeling that she had stepped into someone's private library rather than a commercial establishment. Mia had been behind the counter that first day, a young woman with dark curly hair and warm brown skin and an infectious laugh that seemed too big for her small frame. She had recommended a novel Evelyn had never heard of, something about a woman reinventing herself after loss, and they had talked for an hour, the rain forgotten, the world outside fading away. Evelyn had come back the next week. And the week after that. And soon, her visits to Second Chapter became the highlight of her weeks, a bright spot in a routine that had grown stale without her noticing. She told herself it was the books. The conversation. The simple pleasure of talking to someone who was genuinely interested in ideas. She didn't admit, even to herself, that she was falling in love. Mia Santos had opened Second Chapter 3 years ago, pouring her entire inheritance from her grandmother into the tiny space. It was impractical, everyone had told her. Bookshops were dying. No one her age would be caught dead running one. But Mia had never been interested in what was practical. She had been raised by her grandmother, her parents having died in a car accident when she was 6, and her grandmother had believed in books the way other people believed in religion. Books saved lives, she always said. Books healed wounds that nothing else could reach. After her grandmother died, leaving Mia alone in the world at 21. Opening a bookshop had felt like the only way to honor her memory. To carry on her legacy. To create a space where other people might find the same comfort Mia had found in stories. The shop didn't make much money. Mia lived in a tiny apartment above it, eating ramen more often than she cared to admit, wondering sometimes if she had made a terrible mistake. But then customers would come in, lost, searching, in need of something they couldn't name, and Mia would find them the perfect book, the one that spoke directly to their souls, and the look on their faces made everything worth it. When Evelyn Hart walked in that rainy afternoon, Mia had known immediately that she was looking at someone in pain. It was in the way Evelyn held herself, stiff and controlled, like she was afraid of what might happen if she relaxed. It was in her eyes, which were intelligent and observant but also profoundly sad. Mia had recommended a book about reinvention because it seemed like what Evelyn needed. But really, she had wanted an excuse to keep talking to this fascinating stranger, this woman who seemed to carry entire worlds inside her and yet appeared desperately lonely. By the third visit, Mia had admitted to herself that she had a crush. By the fifth, she knew it was more than that. And by the 10th, she was forced to confront a reality that terrified her. She was falling in love with a woman 28 years her senior, a woman who probably saw her as a child, a woman who was so far out of her league that Mia almost laughed at her own audacity for even imagining something could happen between them. But something was happening. Mia could feel it in the way Evelyn's eyes lingered on her face during their conversations. In the way Evelyn found excuses to touch her, a hand on her arm to emphasize a point, fingers brushing when she handed over a book. In the way Evelyn's carefully controlled expression would soften whenever Mia made her laugh. Something was happening. And Mia didn't know what to do about it. The moment that changed everything came on a winter evening, 3 months after they had first met. Evelyn had stayed late at the shop, helping Mia reorganize a section on psychology. They had ordered Thai food and eaten it sitting on the floor between the shelves, talking about everything and nothing. And then, somehow, the conversation had turned personal. "Can I ask you something?" Mia had said, carefully. "Why are you so sad?" Evelyn had frozen, her chopstick suspended halfway to her mouth. "I'm not," she started, then stopped. "Is it that obvious?" "To me it is," Mia said. "You're brilliant and accomplished and everyone who comes in here respects you. But when you think no one's watching, you look like you're carrying something heavy. Something that hurts." Evelyn was quiet for a long moment. The shop was silent around them, closed for the evening, just the two of them in a cocoon of books and half-eaten takeout. "I've been alone for a long time," Evelyn finally said. "And I used to think there was something wrong with me. That I was incapable of love. Of really connecting with another person. Used to think." Mia asked softly. Evelyn looked at her then, really looked at her, and Mia felt the air leave her lungs. "I'm not sure what I think anymore," Evelyn whispered. "I'm not sure of anything anymore." And then, Mia would never be sure who moved first. They were kissing. A soft, tentative brush of lips that sent electricity through Mia's entire body. A kiss that lasted only a moment but contained years of loneliness and longing and the terrifying, exhilarating possibility of something new. Evelyn pulled back first, her eyes wide with something that looked like panic. "I'm sorry," she said, standing abruptly, nearly knocking over a pile of books. "I shouldn't have, you're so young, and this is completely inappropriate." "Evelyn." Mia stood too, catching her hand before she could flee. "Look at me." Evelyn looked. And in her eyes, Mia saw not just attraction, not just desire, but something deeper. Something raw and vulnerable and afraid. "I've been falling in love with you for months," Mia said clearly. "And I don't care that you're older than me. I don't care what anyone else would think. I only care about how I feel when I'm with you, which is more alive than I've ever felt in my entire life." "You don't know what you're saying," Evelyn breathed. "You're 24. You have your whole life ahead of you. You should be dating people your own age, not not some lonely professor who's old enough to be your mother. But I don't want people my own age, Mia said. I want you. I've been trying not to want you because I thought you could never feel the same way, but you just kissed me, and I need you to tell me the truth. Do you feel something for me or not? Evelyn closed her eyes. When she opened them again, there were tears on her cheeks. I feel everything for you, she said. And it terrifies me. That night, they talked until dawn. Not about the kiss, not yet, but about their lives, their pasts, the wounds they carried. Evelyn spoke about her failed marriage, her years of loneliness, her growing suspicion that she might be attracted to women but her fear of exploring that possibility so late in life. Mia spoke about losing her parents, losing her grandmother, building a life from scratch in a city where she knew no one. They were both survivors. They had both been alone for too long. And somewhere between the psychology section and the poetry corner, they had found each other. It wasn't easy, what came next. Evelyn was terrified, of what her colleagues would think, of what her sister would say, of the age difference that seemed to loom over everything. They agreed to take things slowly, to figure out what they were before announcing it to the world. But keeping their relationship secret felt wrong to both of them. It felt like shame, like hiding, like pretending that the most beautiful thing that had ever happened to them was something to be embarrassed about. After 3 months of secret dinners and stolen moments and falling more deeply in love with every passing day, they agreed to stop hiding. Evelyn told her sister. Mia told the few close friends she had. They started appearing in public together, not hiding their affection, not pretending to be anything other than what they were, two women in love. And then came the photograph. The person who took it was a stranger, someone browsing in the bookshop who had recognized Evelyn from a recent interview about her research. The photo itself was innocent, two women looking at a book together. But the caption the stranger posted with it was not, spotted, psychology professor Dr. Evelyn Hart getting cozy with bookshop owner who's young enough to be her daughter. Love in the age gap. The internet did what the internet does. The photo was shared, commented on, analyzed, mocked. Some people were supportive, calling the relationship beautiful, praising them for their courage. But others were cruel, calling Evelyn a predator, questioning Mia's motives, suggesting that there must be something sinister beneath the surface. Evelyn wanted to hide. To disappear. To protect Mia from the ugliness being directed at both of them. But Mia had a different idea. We're not doing anything wrong, she said, 3 days after the photo went viral, sitting with Evelyn in her apartment while Evelyn's phone buzzed with messages and calls she was afraid to answer. We're two adults who fell in love. There's no scandal here unless we act like there is. People are saying horrible things, Evelyn said. About both of us. My department chair called today to express concern. One of my graduate students sent me an article about power dynamics in age gap relationships. Everyone thinks they understand something about us, but no one actually knows us. So let's make them know us, Mia said. Let's tell our story. Not for the people who will hate us no matter what, but for the people who might be inspired by it. The other women who are questioning their sexuality later in life. The young people in love with older partners who feel like they can't talk about it. The lonely people who think they'll never find anyone. Evelyn stared at her. You want to go public? I want to stop hiding, Mia said firmly. Hiding didn't keep us safe, someone photographed us anyway. And hiding makes it seem like we have something to be ashamed of. We don't. I love you. You love me. What's shameful about that? Evelyn thought about all the years she had spent hiding. Hiding her loneliness. Hiding her questions about her sexuality. Hiding the parts of herself that didn't fit the image she thought she was supposed to project. She was tired of hiding. They did an interview together with a local publication, a long, thoughtful conversation about how they met, how their relationship developed, the challenges they faced as a couple with a significant age gap. The article was honest and raw, addressing the criticisms head-on while also celebrating what they had found in each other. The response was overwhelming. For every hateful comment, there were dozens of supportive ones. Messages poured in from women who had come out later in life, from young people who had felt validated by seeing a relationship like theirs represented, from strangers who simply wanted to wish them well. Evelyn's department chair backed off, perhaps influenced by the positive press coverage. Her students, far from judging her, seemed newly interested in her research on attachment and connection. Some even admitted that seeing their professor in a loving relationship had made them reconsider their own assumptions about what was possible in love. And Mia's bookshop, second chapter, became a destination. People came from across the city, from across the state, just to visit the place where this love story had begun. Sales increased. The shop that had been barely surviving was now thriving. But the most important change happened inside both of them. For Evelyn, being with Mia meant finally letting go of the armor she had worn for decades. She had spent so long protecting herself, keeping people at a distance, convinced that she was fundamentally incapable of deep connection. But Mia had seen through all of it. Mia had reached past the defenses and found the real Evelyn underneath, and loved her anyway. At 52, Evelyn felt herself blooming in ways she hadn't thought possible. She laughed more. She cried more. She felt more present in her own life than she had in years. The research she was doing on attachment theory took on new dimensions as she experienced firsthand what secure attachment actually felt like. For Mia, loving Evelyn meant finally letting herself be vulnerable again. After losing everyone she cared about, first her parents, then her grandmother, she had built walls of her own. She had thrown herself into her bookshop, into caring for her customers, because it was easier than risking her heart on someone who might leave. But Evelyn hadn't left. Evelyn had stayed, through the viral photo and the public scrutiny and all the whispered judgments of people who didn't understand. Evelyn had chosen her, every single day, and that choosing had healed something in Mia that she hadn't known was broken. 1 year after they first met, they held a small gathering at second chapter to celebrate their anniversary. Just close friends and family, Evelyn's sister, who had come around after initially expressing concern, a few of Mia's loyal customers who had become like family, some of Evelyn's colleagues who had surprised her with their support. Evelyn gave a toast, standing among the shelves of books where they had first talked, first kissed, first admitted that something impossible was happening between them. "A year ago," she said, her voice thick with emotion, "I walked into this shop thinking I was just looking for shelter from the rain. I had no idea I was actually looking for shelter for my entire life. I had been wandering alone for so long that I had forgotten what it felt like to be found." She looked at Mia, who was standing beside her, tears streaming down her face. "Mia found me," Evelyn continued. "Not just in this bookshop, but in all the ways that matter. She found the parts of myself I had hidden away and convinced me they were worth loving. She showed me that it's never too late to become who you were always meant to be." She raised her glass. To second chapter. Not just the bookshop, but the concept. Because every one of us deserves a second chapter. A chance to rewrite our stories. A chance to find love, even when we've given up hope that love will find us. Mia kissed her then, in front of everyone, and the small crowd cheered. Later that night, after the guests had left and they were alone among the books again, Mia turned to Evelyn with a serious expression. "There's something I want to ask you," she said. Evelyn felt her heart skip. "What is it?" Mia reached into her pocket and pulled out a small box. Inside was a ring, simple, elegant, perfect. "I know we've only been together a year," Mia said. "And I know people will say it's too soon, that we're too different, that it will never work. But I don't care what people say. I've never been as sure of anything as I am of us." She took Evelyn's hand. "Will you marry me?" Evelyn looked at this young woman who had changed everything, who had walked into her life like sunlight into a dark room and refused to leave. She thought about all the years she had spent alone, convinced she was unlovable. She thought about the fear she had felt when they first kissed, the certainty that this beautiful thing would be taken from her somehow. But Mia was still here. Mia was offering her a future. Mia was asking her to stop being afraid and say yes to something extraordinary. Yes, Evelyn said, her voice breaking. Yes, of course, yes. They were married 6 months later, in a small ceremony at the bookshop. Evelyn's sister gave her away. Mia's best customer, an 80-year-old woman named Dorothy who had become like a surrogate grandmother, read a poem about love that transcends boundaries. The photograph from the wedding was also posted on social media. But this time, the comments were almost universally positive. People who had followed their story from the beginning celebrated with them. Strangers wished them well. Even some who had been critical before admitted that maybe they had been wrong, that maybe love really didn't follow the rules they thought it should. Today, Evelyn is 54 and Mia is 26. They're still together, still running second chapter, still proving every day that age is just a number and love is what matters. Evelyn has written a new book, not about attachment theory this time, but about coming out later in life, about finding love when you've given up hope, about the courage it takes to let yourself be seen. The book has helped thousands of women who are walking a similar path. And Mia has expanded the bookshop, adding a small cafe where customers can sit and read and maybe, just maybe, find their own unexpected connection. Above the cafe entrance hangs a sign that reads, "Every love story deserves a second chapter." If this story touched you, if it made you think about love differently, or gave you hope for your own second chapter, I'd love to hear from you. Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you know someone who needs to hear that it's never too late for love, please share this story with them. Because we all need reminders, sometimes, that beautiful things can happen when we least expect them. And remember, your story isn't over. The best chapters might still be waiting to be written.